Hey guys, welcome back to the Calvinist Contradiction. We're here for another episode of Where is Calvinism in the Opening Narrative of the Bible? We're doing this because we believe that if Calvinism was the true interpretation, theology, or methodology of interpreting the scriptures, it would be clearly, consistently, coherently applied in the text and be able to be derived from the text. And we're asking that question, is this the case? And if not, is Calvinism true? It's simple as that. And so thank you for commenting in the comment. You can comment in the live chat. We will read them and respond to them. And then also, thank you for sharing, liking, and helping this channel to grow. We want to share God's love with everybody, and liking the videos, subscribing to the channel. Those things are just a practical way to help, as well as praying about supporting my ministry here in Asia Minor, where I've lived for the last 10 years as a church planner, sharing sharing God's love for every man, woman, and child in a different nation. I'm an American. I've lived over here for 10 years, and we've done that and had our kids over here because we believe that God loves everybody, unlike the Calvinistic system propagates. And so the link to support us is in the description section. You can do that through a 501c3 nonprofit, so tax deductible, or you could just give through PayPal or something like that. And the link for the chapter that we're talking about is also in the description section. If you want to follow along with us, please feel free to do so. And so today is going to be a follow-up of something that we talked about a long time ago, probably like 5 or 6 videos ago, so maybe a month ago. And that is when Jacob leaves, predestined and determined before the foundation of the world, apparently, though the text never clearly or emphatically states any of this in 35 chapters now. But when he leaves, Jacob says something that was quite interesting. And I'll just say it right here. I'll read it for you. And then it says, this was when he was at Bethel. He had a dream. He saw the visible Yahweh, which is, of course, Jesus revealed in the Old Testament. Here, he was on top of a ladder. And then Jacob said this, which we noted, let me quote it and then I'll say. And so it says, then Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and will keep me on this journey that I take, and will give me food to eat and garments to wear, and I return to my father's house safely, then the Lord will be my God. And so this is the Calvinist problem right here, because we talked about this with Abraham, that when Abraham leaves in Genesis 12, Calvinists say that's him being, that's when he was elected before the foundation of the world. So I don't know what they're trying to prove, but this is when God called him and he was saved. Well, he's actually saved before the foundation of the world and unconditionally from when anything Abraham did in their own systematic, but I don't know what point they're trying to prove, except for conflating calling literally out of a place with calling to eternal salvation, which I wouldn't be surprised if that's a thing, because they conflate everything. They conflate everything to mean two things when it really only means one in reality. They conflate things like love to actually mean hate, and all this baloney sausage that they have to try to fit and live in their systematic, but they can't do it. And so he says, so this is the problem. If that's when they say that Jacob is saved, okay, called before the foundation of the world, he hasn't placed his allegiance into him. And they can't handle it when I say, actually, the systematic, you could have people that don't even believe in God or Jesus, but still they're going to end up in heaven. And who and where in the Bible does it say that anybody is going to be in heaven? Because who's up there worshiping Baal? Who's up there who placed their allegiance in Baal and they're still in there? And so Jacob here clearly says he hasn't placed his allegiance he hasn't placed his allegiance to God yet. Has he wrestled with God? Has he done all these other things? Of course. But we're going to see right here, he even allowed worship of other gods up until this point. And so this is where I would say is the placing, or the allegiance, where he's placing his allegiance onto God. And we'll see what God does here. And says, so then we have this. again, Calvinists, here's a question right off the bat, so you don't have to get 5 minutes into this. What's the point of God's theophany? Which is when God shows up as a man, and talks with anybody. We've seen this with all the patriarchs now. This happens a lot. What is the point of this? Is God, if God is orchestrating everything behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz, don't look behind the curtain, because God's just actually back there doing everything. Never says in the text any of this, but he goes and he's doing all this. And so what's the point of him showing up? He's just orchestrating anyway. And so it's the puppet master. Can't say that because Calvinists will reel. It's the man with the remote control. Well, we're not robots. Can't say that. It's the potter exposing himself here, because Romans 8 and 9. Praise God. Our theology is. If you got rid of those two chapters, they wouldn't have a theology. Actually, I mean, it's just that simple. But the potter is exposing himself here, and he's saying, okay, well, the potter's going to show himself, and even though he's just doing everything, he's just everything behind the scene, he's doing it. So what is the point of that? What's the point of the theophany? Leave it in the comment section. I don't really want to see anything else from you guys until you answer these questions. Don't take us on some big dog and pony show of your theological system that's all shiny, and then all you have to do is critically think about it, and it's just a weak piece of garbage ready for the trash heap. And so what's the point of this? Then God said to Jacob, arise and go up to Bethel and live there, and make an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau. So see what the Bible does here. This is what we ask you to do, and you can't do it. Calvinists out there, they're referring back to Genesis 28 when he said, I will do this. The thing that I just read to you, because we're reading the Bible in context, in the ancient Near Eastern context, and then in the context of literally the context of how the Bible is unfolding, the opening narrative. And so he's saying, go back there. Why? Because Jacob said, if you bring me back here safely, you will be my God. So Jacob said to his household and to all that were with him, put away the foreign gods which are among you, and purify yourself, and change your garment, and let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make an altar there to God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and has been with me wherever I have gone. So the same exact things. We know that he's making a reference because these are the same exact things said in Genesis 28, 20 through 21. If you do these things, I'll come back here and you will be my God. And so Calvinist, Jacob obviously is letting, and God is not allowing. God has Jacob in his camp worshiping other gods, but he's still called and elected before the foundation of the world. He's saved. So if Jacob would have died here in time and space, he would have gone to heaven. No, he hasn't pledged his allegiance to him yet. This is why God shows up in the form of theophany. That's the point, to reveal himself to him, not something that's just supposed to happen before the foundation of the world and it doesn't matter because John Calvin wrote it. I don't know. It's not in the Bible. It's not biblical. It's not here. I'm showing you how biblical theology works. Says it, and then it's done. So what's the point of this in Calvinism? That's what we're asking you is, what's the point of God coming back here and saying, hey, go back to there and place your allegiance? He's saying, go back there. And Jacob picks up on this. How? Because he says the same exact thing he said he would pledge his allegiance to if he's brought back, because he's given him food, he's answered him in the day of distress, and been with him wherever he has gone. So then they gave them to Jacob. So it's not like Jacob wasn't, he says, give me the foreign gods that you guys are worshiping. They give Jacob and the rings and all that stuff, which is their pledging of allegiance to these foreign gods. These are the things that they do to show their allegiance to the foreign gods. And Jacob hid them under the oak, which was in Shechem. So he buries them. They're done with them, right? So Jacob seems to me, as a critically thinking person, he is placing his allegiance into what? God. He's taking away these things. And that's what we're saying. Calvinists, you can't say this because it's unconditional. It doesn't matter. So Jacob shows up there with a bunch of, foreign gods. Well, they're saved. Just like you say Israel's saved. Not this Israel. I'm talking about like the group of Israel, even though they're worshiping Tammuz in the temple. Ezekiel 8, God's fled the temple because of the abominations going on there. They have a bunch of, abominable things under the temple that they're worshiping. The whole thing's just a stinking pile, a heap, and he leaves. Ezekiel sees him at the river of Babylon. He says, "Oh, this isn't good. The Shekinah glory is gone. It's in Babylon. It shouldn't be here." And he shows him why. But all those guys are saved because you can have Baal worship, Tammuz worshipers in heaven under the Calvinistic systematic. And I can hear you screaming now, but that's my point. It's unconditional. What condition is there? None, right? Unconditional. That's the word of it. So if God elects you, even though you're a Satan worshiper, although in the systematic, Satan worship or any of that stuff is just for God's glory anyway. So it makes sense why it wouldn't really matter to God if you are Antoine Levin, who wrote the Satanic Bible. That was for God's glory. God wanted that. God did that. There's no difference between Satan and God in the Calvinistic systematic. And so here in our theology, biblical theology, they're saying Jacob only swore he's going to place his allegiance into Yahweh and the visible Yahweh. We're going to see here in this in a second. If he's brought back to where he pledged in Bethel safely and back to his father's house. And so Jacob's like, okay, I'm going to make good on this promise. He does this. He takes everything and he's getting rid of it, right? This is biblical theology, not bologna sausage theology from some dude who's, lives contradictory to his own systematic after his namesake, whose name's John Calvin. Check out the comment in the comment section from Marius, who just posted that. Okay, as they journeyed, a great terror fell upon the cities that were around them, and they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. Why? Because God predestined it before the foundation of the world? No, because his sons just murdered a whole clan and everything else that's been going on. And so Jacob came to Luz, that is Bethel. It literally says that. So there's a piece of editorial literature right there. They came in and they said Luz. People might not know that in time and space when this is being written, that is Bethel. So they give them some extra information, which is in the land of Canaan. And he and all the people who were with him, he built an altar there and called the place El Bethel, because there God had revealed himself to him when he fled from his brother. Now Deborah, Rebecca's nurse, died, and she was buried in below Bethel under the oak. It was named Elon Bakuth. Then God appeared to Jacob again when he came to Padan Aram, and he blessed him. And God said to him, so he appeared. So before he just says, so God said. So this is what we're asking, Calvinists. Why does he need to appear? He's just orchestrating why does he need to talk? Okay, we'll give you that. Why does he need to appear? What is the point of the theophany? What is the theophany trying to persuade or convey to Jacob when he's just orchestrating everything, controlling everything meticulously behind the scenes anyway? Point. But a contradictory God is only fit for a contradictory systematic named after a contradictory person himself. This is why the channel exists. So what's the point of a theophany? Well, we would tell you it's to persuade Jacob to maybe even convince Jacob at this point. This is the right decision that you're doing, putting your trust in me. And he says, then God appeared to Jacob again, and he came to Padan Aram, and he blessed him. And God said to him, your name is Jacob. Well, he told him back when he wrestled him that his name is Israel now, but you shall no longer be called Jacob. So this is the end of Jacob. But Israel shall be your name. Thus he called him Israel. So God also said to him, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful, multiply. There it is. Okay? This is a nation, and a company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall come forth from you. The land which I give to Abraham, to Isaac, I will give to you. I will give the land to you and your descendants. Let me skip back real quick and just see something. Yes. Okay. So be fruitful and multiply. We've talked about this a lot. Biblical theology, right, is where you have patterns and stuff like that. That's where we can know that it's not Genesis 3 in the ancient Jewish, ancient Near Eastern worldview that shaped the world as the sinful mess that it is today. It's not just one rebellion, it's three: Genesis 3. Genesis 6, Genesis 11, and it tells you this repeating story of these three dual rebellions so that we know why the world is this way. And then Genesis 12, boom, sets it back up for something new is going to happen here. And that is with uh, Abraham being called out of his own country, right? Not unto salvation, but just literally being called out. Come, come and follow me. What he's doing here. And so I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I'll make your name great. You shall be a blessing. Blessed are those who bless you, those who curse you. And so, and in all the earth, your family will be blessed. Go forth from your country, from your relatives, from your father's house, from the land which I show you, and I will make you a great nation. So these are all the same things. That's 12, right? So right after the Babel event, you have this, the calling out. 15, you have where he puts his trust into the Lord, and he says, and then he believed the Lord, and he was reckoned to him as righteous. Said, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans and gave you this land to possess. Okay, so that's what we're seeing go here. I am the God Almighty. He says here, be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come forth from you, and a king shall come forth from you. And the land which I give Abraham and Isaac, I will give to you, and I will give you the land of your descendants after you. So how does this go down? Jacob, back in 28, 20, and 21, he says, if I get back to this spot and you take care of me, I will place my allegiance into you. That's my translation of that. You will become my God. During that whole time, apparently there is other idol worship because he knows it's in the camp and he says, bring it over to him. So we're not going to assume anything other than that. This is just in the camp and he's aware of it. So he doesn't have this strict policy of just Yahweh worship going on. He was in Laban's house for like 14 years or 20 years or something like that. And he was an idol worshiper. And so Jacob saved when he's idol worshiping, when he has this going on in his camp, which is later condemned to death if anything like this is found out under the law. No. But now he gets this, Adamic blessing. Where? When he comes back to where he promised that he would place his allegiance to. Free will is not in the Bible. It never says free will. Well, how did he get here? God meticulously made him come here. That's not in the Bible either. So you are referring to something that's not in the Bible anywhere. No, nowhere. Free will is alluded right here. I'll do this if you do this. He does that and then he does this. But you're supposed to think that it's meticulously controlled. No, because he said, I'll do this. He comes back here. And then what happens? How does this prove that this is the right theology? Because he actually blesses him. See how theology is so simple when you read it in the time, space that it's literally taking place when you're reading the Bible, and then without all this extra bologna sausage in between the lines, which you're just filling in there as fluff, which you got from Romans 8:9, Calvin's interpretation of 8:9 to boot. You take that out, you never have that, you don't have any of this. If that wasn't read back into these texts, you would never have any of this. But it would be so simple for you to see if you just wouldn't have read or been persuaded or been convinced or been, brainwashed into believing this fake systematic. And then God went up from him in the place where he had spoken with him. And Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he had spoken with him, a pillar of stone, and he poured out a drink offering on it, and he also poured oil on it. So he does the dog and pony show here. He's putting his trust in the Lord. He built the altar. He's doing all this. So Jacob named that the place where God had spoken to him, where he had literally seen God, Bethel, which means the house of God. Then they journeyed from Bethel, And when they were still some distance to Ephrat, Rachel began to give birth, and she suffered a severe labor. When she was in severe labor, the midwife said to her, "Do not fear, for now you have another son." It came about as her soul was departing, for she died, and she named him Ben Onai. But his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. And so there's another editorial note there, which is Bethlehem. And Jacob set up a pillar over her grave, and that pillar of Rachel's grave, and that is the pillar of Rachel's grave to this day. Another piece of editorial um, work right there. Rachel's grave to this day. Then Israel journeyed on and pitched his tent beyond the tower of Edom. And it came about while Israel was dwelling in the land that Reuben went and laid with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it. So he tries to usurp the throne here. He goes in and he lays with his father's concubine. Something's going on behind the scenes here. This is not right, obviously, but it wouldn't be a Calvinist contradiction episode, I guess, if we didn't have the appearance of the rapist God here, the fornicating God here, the murderous God here. Because under Calvinism proper, under John Calvin's systematic, where God meticulously does everything, as John Piper's website, Desiring God, says, as unimaginable as it may seem to us today, that the killings of Dennis Rader, where he ate people, to the death camps of Birkenau and Auschwitz, to even the rape and sexual abuse of young children, it's God performing those. It's not him allowing these, it's God doing these for his own glory, because he's a glory monger. He's not selfless, he's selfish. Everything for his glory, even the expense of other people. This is the vampiric, this is the Dracula God, who has to take life for him to be glorified. He has to rape and hurt people for him to be glorified. And God forbid it. That's why we are so against this systematic, because when you play it out to its logical conclusion, this is what you get: a sick rapist for his own glory. Literally. And that's what's going on here. This is sexual perverse thing that, do not uncover your father's nakedness. That is literally don't sleep. That's what it means here. If you go back and if you go forward into Deuteronomy and check that out, it means don't sleep with your father's wife. So we know what happened in with Noah's son. I think we talked about this when we went through there, is that he tried to usurp the throne too, and he slept with his father's wife while Noah was drunk and passed out. He uncovered his father's nakedness. That's what happened there. Not like we think, because we're not thinking in the ancient Near Eastern text or as the Bible in its own context. But if you go in and you look at where has this shown up in the rest of the Bible, uncovering your father's nakedness is sleeping with his wife. And so that's what's going on here. He's trying to usurp the throne. Now there were 12 sons of Jacob, and the sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simon, and Levi, and Judah, and Issachar, and Zebulun, and the sons of Rachel, Joseph, and Benjamin, and the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maid, Dan, and Naphtali, and the sons of Zilpah, Leah's maid, Gad, and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Padan Aram. Jacob came to his father Isaac at Memre, at Kirjat Arba, that is Hebron. Again, another piece of editorial information there for us, where Abraham and Isaac had sojourned. Now, the days of Isaac were 180 years. Isaac breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, an old man of ripe age, and his son Esau and Jacob buried him. And so you have a kind of a wrapping up, a bookend to this whole thing that we are making a case for, and that is Jacob. What's this? 8 chapters earlier, 7 chapters earlier, says I will place my allegiance into believing in you, and you will be my God if you do these things. And then God says, well, and if you bring me back here, if you bring me back to my father's house. And then God says, hey, okay, it's time for you to go back there because he kept his end of the bargain. And so we're not supposed to think that Jacob, out of his own free will, he he pledged that, and now he's going back there. So we're supposed to believe that um, God just orchestrated all this behind the curtain. He moved everything meticulously. He is the ventriloquist. He's making Jacob say these platitudes, and then he makes him bring these in. Then he makes Jacob come back, but we don't ever see this in the text. We clearly see where I just proved to you that Jacob said these out of his own free will. Okay, it doesn't say free will in the Bible. We can conclude, just like it doesn't say menstrual cycle, and we were able to conclude rightly, biblically, scripturally, that Rachel stole her father's idol and sat up on her horse or on her donkey or camel or whatever it was, and then said, the time of women is upon me. And we can conclude that that's a menstrual cycle. She's unclean right there. We can do the same here. He said, I will do this if you do this. God did that. Now, we can conclude that he's going to do this out of his own will, out of his own testimony, out of his own testament, where he said he would do this. And then in time and space in the text, we see him do that. And then we see God bless him for doing that. Just like it doesn't say sex. But as I just referred to, us uncovering your father's nakedness is a euphemism in the Bible for sleeping with your father's wife. What does it say here? And Reuben went and laid with Bill. He just took a nap with her, right? If we're going to take your bologna sausage theology and the way that you handle other theologies to try to, make your theology fit, even though you can't, you have to live contradictory. He takes a nap with her, and Israel found out and heard about this problem. No, he laid with her. He went in with her. He had sexual relations with her. He had sex with her. That's what we can take from the text, though it doesn't explicitly say that. By taking the text in context, we can understand this is what's going on here. And that is how you disprove Calvinism, is by taking the text in the context of the Bible. But just go to Genesis 50. No. Why? Because we can destroy your systematic verse by verse, text by text, and you don't like it. But just go to Exodus 10. No, we're not going to do Romans 8:9, please, we need it. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to go verse by verse. And when we get to Romans, we are going to dismantle your systematic verse by verse. And when we get to 8, there's just absolutely no way you can render the text the way you do by picking and choosing and keeping Calvin, the Calvin God. That's the only way. You get a Calvin God when you take 8 and 9 and you stick it back in everywhere else. But we're telling you right now, there is no place for the Calvinistic interpretation of who God is, going systematically, verse by verse, in the context of the ancient Near East, as we have proven over and over and over on this channel. And just as we saw how they do biblical theology with be fruitful and multiply, he's starting something new here. In what verse is that? That is verse 11. He's starting something new here with Isaac, who's placed his allegiance now into God. He's starting something new. How can we say? Genesis 3. Be fruitful and multiply. What's that? Genesis, I think it's 9. Be fruitful and multiply. He keeps on doing this, the Adamic mandate, where he is literally saying the same thing to teach us something in theology. And so that's what we see here. When we get biblical theology, it's by looking at the biblical text, not creeds, not catechisms, not commentaries, not confessions, not any of these things. Marius, I'm talking to you now, brother. I'm asking you to answer these questions, and you just come in and you post Calvin's commentary, which is contradictory in and of itself. I love you, brother. I love your contribution to this channel. But why don't you do something that would be helpful to us and answer these questions? Not just put on what you want to try to propagate your systematic. Try to defend your systematic. That's what we're telling you to do. What's the point of these things? And so, love you guys out there. Thank you so much. Again, like, subscribe, share these messages with people. Let's teach people how to read the Bible in the biblical context, in the context of the ancient Near East. And we will see you again for another episode of the Calvinist Contradiction here either tomorrow or in a couple days. Love you guys, and we will talk to you soon.